Okay, so after we finished kind of cutting all of those lines and trimming all of those lines, and we have a fairly good idea of where the cabinets are. I don't want you to look at those lights just yet. We're going to talk about lighting and how to place it later. But let's see how we can create a stove with those measurements and a fridge with those measurements. I also added a hood. A hood, by the way, might not actually appear on the kitchen floor plan, so it's fairly okay if you're gonna place it in the elevation. It's not gonna appear in the floor plan. Sometimes that happens. So for now, how do we create those complicated objects, which are the fridge and the stove and the hood? Can we actually get them from somewhere? Actually, we can. And we can get them from a website called cadblock.com. So here's what you're going to be doing. You're just going to go to cadblock.com. All right. And we're going to type here in the search kitchen and enter. Now we're going to find some of those kitchen files you need to buy. And we don't need to do that right now because we actually can find some of the things that can help us without having to pay a penny for it. So I just clicked on the second tab here, and as you can see, we have some interesting blocks that we can use in our kitchen without to have to redraw the oven or the range or the hood or the fridge from scratch. And there's something here called kitchen equipment. So I'm just going to click on that kitchen equipment file, and once you click on it, just click on download CAD blocks. Once you see there is a file that had been downloading on your desktop or your screen, just click on it. And when you click on it, it's going to open, presumably you already have your kitchen file open here, right here. So this is the file. And what we will do is that we're going to actually copy this to our galley kitchen. All right. So how to do that? Well, we can do this a couple of ways. First of all, I can click here on Galley Kitchen, all right, and I'm just going to go to Model View, and I'm going to type a command here called Design Center. So Design. Okay, once I click on Design Center, there is something here that is going to open up. There is a Galley Kitchen, which is a file that I'm working on, and here is the file that I got from cadblock.com. Now, if I click here on this plus sign next to the cadblock.com, there's something here called blocks. Okay, so there's kitchen equipment here, and there's something here. Those are all the blocks that are stored in the file. So this is one way we can get the block that we want from here. All right. As you can see, if I click on blocks here, I have all of those blocks that we had seen inside of the file, and we can get those using Design Center. So all I have to do is just selecting the block that I know or that I want, and then I'm going to place it inside of the file. Okay, this is one way to do it, but again, because those are so small and I didn't really determine which one of those that I need, I'm just going to click this. So just showed you one way of getting the the file or the block. But if I cannot figure out which one I want yet, all I have to do is just click here to close Design Center. And then I'm going to go to kitchen equipment. From kitchen equipment, I'm going to do another trick. I'm just going to say, for example, that this is the block that I want of the stove, of the elevation of the stove. So all I have to do is that I'm going to click on it. And then once it's highlighted, I'm going to right click. And then I'm going to go to clipboard. Now, clipboard, right click again, go to clipboard, and from clipboard, I have something called copy with base point, and this is what I want. So I'm going to click on copy with base point, and then I'm going to hover over this point here, hover over this point here, and then click on the intersection point. Right? Nothing happens, but we can say that specify base point 1 found, and that's it. Now, the next thing is I'm going to click on Galley Kitchen. This is my kitchen, or the elevation of the kitchen, and somewhere, all right, somewhere here, not on the drawing itself, but somewhere in the model space, I'm going to right click the mouse, and then I'm going to go to clipboard, and I'm going to paste as a block. So once I click, I can see it very small. This means that it actually needs scaling, and this is the thing that we're going to do. But once I click anywhere, I can actually place it. So I placed it. The model is small because unfortunately not all blocks come appropriately scaled. So we just got the shape. If you zoomed in, we got the shape that we wanted. But then the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be scaling this using the scale command and the stretch command, so it can actually fit into the measurements of our real stove. Okay, so the second thing we want to do is that we want to scale this on one side, whether it's the x-axis or the y-axis. We just want to scale this according to the height or the real height, because if we measure here the distance, so I'm just going to hover here, okay, pick that point, and then go upward, and then click. So this is 90 millimeters, so that's nonsense. So what is the actual height? That's dependent on the drawing or the elevation that you have, the actual height of your stove. Mine is 1014. So what I will do is that I will actually scale this or scale the height of 90 to become 1014. So how to do that? First of all, we're going to click on scale. And once we click on scale, we're going to select that object here. And then we're going to click enter. All right. We're going to specify, again, this as a base point. So I'm just hovering once upward and once downward, like this. And once again, like that. And then I'm going to pick this as my base point. Okay. Now, you're going to see in the command line, there's something called specify scale factor or copy or reference. Actually, what we want is the reference. So we're just going to click on reference or type R on your keyboard. And once we do that, we need to specify the reference length. Now, the reference length is the current height that we want to change. Okay, so the reference length is the current height of the object that we want to change. So the current height as we measured it is 90. So I'm going to type the current height, which is 90, and press enter. And then after that, I'm going to specify the new length. Now, the new length is the new height that I want this object to adopt to, which is 1014. That's my stove height. And then I'm going to click enter. Now, immediately, if we just zoomed out with the middle mouse wheel, we're going to see that this is, if I click on measure, I'm going to measure the distance between, for example, this point and down there. So that's exactly 1014 as I wanted it. All right, so we're done with the height. We made the height the right height. But can we do this also on the x-axis? No. If we do this on the x-axis, the height is going to change. So we're only capable of doing the change for scale or scaling an object based on the x or the y. We cannot do it on both axes. So what should we do? Now, we still need to fit this into the right width that we have here, which is shown in the floor plan. Because if we measure the width or the real width of the stove that I have, it's 860. And then this one, definitely, if we measure it, it's 676. So what should we do? Well, first of all, you need to make sure that you know the difference in value between the 860 and 676, meaning is that I'm going to use my calculator, which so to use 860 minus 676. So I know that this is going to equal 184. So the difference between the current x-axis, which is the width, and the x-axis that I want for my stove is 184 millimeters. Okay, so what to do to make sure that this expands 184 millimeters more? So this is what will happen. First of all, I will use a command called stretch, and we're going to stretch half of that stove to the right with a numerical distance that is 184. But to do this, we actually need, for stretch to work, we need to explode that block. Stretch is not going to work when you have an entity that is a block. So the first thing that I need to do is that I'm going to click on explode, and then I'm going to click on the block, and then I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard. And this, if I click again, if it's still not exploded, I'm going to click again on explode, and this is going to ensure that all of the items here are segments. They are not grouped anymore. Now, the second thing that I need to do is that when I click on stretch, now if I hover over and selected the whole block, or the whole, now it's not a block, but the whole stove drawing, and then I try to move it, the whole object is going to move. So because of the name stretch, I will only need to select half, okay, of the, or 2/3. Sometimes it's half, sometimes it's 2/3, so you have to try your luck with it. But here, let's say, for example, that I want to take this knob, which is exactly in the middle. We can either remove it and then we can get it back, or we can take this side altogether and stretch it. So what I will do is that I'm going to pick with my cursor here that turned into a square. I'm going to click and just drag a cloud all around. Take a look at where I am picking, all around 2/3 or half of the stove. And once I'm done with my selection, I'm just going to click anywhere here. So notice what we have picked. All right. Now you might think that we picked everything here, but we still have some lines that you can see which are not picked with the selection. So take a look at my selection and make sure that you either pick half or pick 2/3 of the objects, depending on what the object actually is. And then I'm going to click enter on my keyboard. And now the next thing that I want to do is that I want to actually click here on one of those points and then move. Now, when we move, I can actually control how far I want to go, because you can see that I have numbers that are moving with me on the screen. So I'm just going to type 184, which is the number, which is a difference between the 667 width and 860 width that I want the stove to adopt to. And then I'm going to click enter on my keyboard. All right. So I managed to stretch using stretch the x-axis, and now it is exactly 860. Okay, just like what I wanted. If you see that you want to move this, you can definitely do that, because I'm going to click on move, and then I'm going to select this line and this circle here and enter, and I'm going to select the midpoint. I'm going to hover over the midpoint here, and now I can place this exactly in the middle. Okay, if you want to make this a block, okay, so now that you have rescaled it properly according to the size of your stove, all you have to do, just go to block, enter. All right, and this is stove, and you can also specify it by the height, 1014, for example, height by 860 as the width for width. All right, I'm going to specify a base point, so I'm just going to pick a point here, and again, I prefer to pick that point all the time, which is here. And then I'm going to select the objects. Okay, so I selected everything, enter, and that's the stove right there with the right measurements that you wanted. Click OK, and then you can move it into position. All right, so I'm going to click on move, Make sure that ortho is off, and then you can move it right where you want it to be. Okay, so just try this with the other. I did exactly the same thing with the fridge. So the fridge, I got it from here as well. This is the fridge that I got. And I did the exact same thing for it to fit in here according to the measurements that I have of my fridge. So I used scale and stretch. Normally, it's better to use scale first and make sure that the height is met first, which is the Y, and then use stretch to stretch it on the X-axis. This is the way that I do it, is that I reserve scale for the height, and I reserve stretch for the X-axis, which is the width, and that's why it works much better than if you flipped it. So this is the way that I used for the fridge. As you can see, the fridge here is skinny in comparison to mine, and I use that also on the hood. Okay, so hopefully you can be able to do that in your project and select something similar. There are also some interesting or other interesting CAD blocks that you can search if you want to. So make sure to search them and download any of those, provided that they don't have that mark. Okay, so anything that you want to search, lighting, for example, or interiors, or any of those, just type the space that you're searching, the blocks for, and then you can have anything that doesn't have the $sign, means that you can actually download it and use it for free.